in hindsight, we were incredibly naive and we thought we'd have an instant business. You know, and we were like, yeah, and then we realized we're like, actually this A costs a lot of money, and B, you know, everything takes time. It's a long, slow process. So,
and I mean, you get to the point where you understand that there's no quick fixes. There's nothing that is a quick fix. I mean, you could go the commercial fertilizer route, but that, you know,
in the long term,
that's just killing your soils essentially.
Hey there, Nico from Greenspace. I am here with Kai and Naya at their place, and we are just kind of having a bit of a tour as to what they are doing on this farm that you guys have just kind of recently bought in the last year or two, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was it before you came into possession of it? What was happening on it?
There was some farming activities. There was a portion of the farm on the southern side that was growing green beans, and then on the northern side we had more of a market garden. Yeah. People were growing kalembula and cabbages, I believe, and a bit of maize. And
now your plans of having taken it over, what are you hoping to kind of do and develop here essentially?
So the main goal here, as we've spoken about, is to basically try and regenerate the land a bit. There's been annual fires for the last 40 years that we can see, which has crossed through the entire farm pretty much. So yeah, basically to improve the soil fertility and water retention in the soils is a big part of what we want to do. At the moment, this is a flood-prone area, which we have experienced one season of so far. So we are putting in a few drainages at the moment as well to try and divert the water, which we'll hopefully bring back onto the farm once we have that established. But our main objective is to basically
produce organic market garden vegetables, as well as some pigs, and we have layer chickens.
Okay. So mixed farming, arable as well as livestock.
An integrated system basically. Yeah.
You've been through a rainy season, which
we came out here.
Season to be through in a season, isn't it?
No, you do want to experience a rainy season. I think anyone looking for property should, before building or anything like that. That's why we didn't put up any structures really. We overhauled the existing structure. But yeah, definitely you've got to experience a rainy season on any piece of land to really get a feel.
Understand what it's going to be. In some ways, I think you've kind of been cheated because that rainy season we had wasn't.
I know.
The full rainy season.
It hasn't been the best year for a first-time farmer. It's been quite cool, and we had acquired the property in March last year. Yeah. Then in July, the entire farm got taken by a fire. Yeah. And then we experienced the crazy floods, and then drought. So
you kind of been put through the ringer, all sides.
Put through everything,
So it's been an interesting first year, to be here.
Kind of, what would your takeaways from that kind of first experience of the rainy season? Obviously, it has been an unconventional rainy season. But, what have you learned, I suppose, from this first almost year that you've been here?
I think one is, the first thing I would have done, pushed a bit more on, would be speak to the neighbors, right? Get an understanding from them as to what actually happens on the land. I mean, our neighbors did mention that, this place does flood here and there, but we were kind of like, okay, we'll see how bad it really is, So yeah, definitely, if you can't control the water coming in, put in a bit of infrastructure on your drainages. We moved here in mid-November, so we really only had a month to do up the house a bit, make that livable.
That's very short timing before actually.
And then, try to, plan our crops, number one, what we're going to grow, try and get the seed.
Having never
see what tools we need.
That before.
So it was a bit of a rushed first season, definitely.
I would also say just not to get too comfortable on what you think you know. You know, like this year we saw that there was the big drought, and we're supposed to be experiencing floods now, supposedly at the end of the year. And it's just, you realize that we can't predict things as much as we used to be able to. And you always need to have a backup plan. I mean, we had a lot of pipe here existing from the previous owner. There was irrigation that just needed to be dug out of the ground and things. And in hindsight, had we known that there was going to be a drought, you know, we would have just set up some irrigation, but we didn't know that. But, you know, we just expected there to be the rain, you know, so that's what I mean. Don't, you know, expect the unexpected basically, and just have all of your bases covered. So now we're planning our drainages, and we're like, okay, we need to do them, you know, say this deep. I keep telling him, let's do it twice as deep as it's supposed to be, just because
you're planning for the 1,000
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Have, you know, just be prepared for anything basically.
I mean, in a way, it's been a bit of a blessing that we've got to experience all this, you know,
in the first
abnormal stuff, going through all the fires, the floods, the drought, because it's, you know, it's made us quick learning. I mean, you know, we've been thrown in the deep end, if you could put it that way.
It teaches you how to adapt much
quickly,
quicker, doesn't it?
So, you know, I do think mentally at least, we're not there in terms of what we need, but we're a lot more prepared for these kind of challenges. I mean, we had a fire come in last week, and we managed to stop that, number one, by putting up a proper fire break around the farm.
Because these are certain things that then are going to have to be done annually to protect.
It'll be an annual thing, so exactly.
And then you also just sort of get creative. So we've been looking at this situation and thinking, you know, we do a fire break, but then essentially as well, that means we're also burning a portion of our land, which we don't want. What are the other ways to go around it? And we know that green doesn't really burn, you know, so if we are able to somehow, you know, depending on irrigation and water sources, able to, you know, have sort of greenery on the boundary of the farm, instead of burning it, just keep it green, then that would be its own green break rather than a fire break. So
you know, there is a lot I don't think that people quite fully realize upon acquiring something that they've never had before. And, you know, very few people would have a large enough property where then those kinds of considerations actually come out to then say, okay, what do I do? How do I utilize the space? And I think the way that you've kind of approached it and said, well, let's take it slow, you know, get a few things up and running, so that you can kind of support oneself in the time being, with then developing longer term plans is a very important aspect of actually looking at property management, really. Because this is as much as you call it a farm, it's a property management scenario 100%. That you have to be looking at from that perspective.
And it's also a home.
Exactly. No, definitely.
But also, like with the floods, you know, we're complaining about the floods, but, you know, we're trying to turn a potential negative thing into a possibility to harvest water. So now we're planning, we had a surveyor here yesterday, and we were looking at potentially creating a natural dam off that massive drainage that we want to put in.
And also potentially swaling up a portion of the land.
Trying to harvest that water into the land rather than, you know,
make it useful.
Well, especially too if it's coming from off farm onto your farm, you know, it's a bit of in some ways it's a bit of a blessing.
You
know, too much all at once can be problematic. But if you can then learn to control it.
Exactly.
Like you say, that could
it's free
give
water.
you an extra 1 or 2 months of irrigation down the line.
Exactly. That's the plan.
So I think that kind of planning stage is a massive one too, and just taking the time to give yourself the ability to observe and then come up with right plans means much less correction down the line.
Definitely. I would say if you want to go into it for a business, it's really difficult because A plus B does not equal C in farming. And that's been, you know, we went in thinking, okay, boom, you know, we moved here in November. We thought, okay, by February, you know, we should be having a bit of a stable income. Veggies will be going this, that, the other. Reality is, you know, still we're not, you know.
You got to be honest with yourself.
Exactly.
You got to be really honest, and document financials. I think is a massive thing that a lot of people
but
oversee.
farming is a business.
It is a business.
And one has to look
You
at
have
it that
to
way.
go into it
what are
as
your
a
costs?
business.
What are your income streams?
Yeah.
And then what are your margins?
Exactly.
So I think a lot of times people just think, oh, it's my farm, and you know, I put the money in and I get the money out.
It can be a constant hole, you know, for financials.
Yeah.
It really can.
Especially if you're going the conventional route.
Exactly.
And buying in fertilizer and doing all that.
Being dependent on seed, being dependent on,
Yeah, and you know, we have to be thinking of that kind of multi-stream systems where you're integrating animals and arable crops into that system.
100%.
Maybe even fruits and things like that in there.
100%.
Looking at processing or value addition as a means of just trying to capture as much value from it.
100%.
I mean, before we moved into this, you know, makeshift house, we were growing mushrooms in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you know, I think it's good. Again, we've been diversifying and trying to figure out, you know, what can we do. So,
but also, like you say, have different streams of income.
Exactly.
If you're only growing maize, for example, and you do 15 hectares of maize, and then you hit a drought, that's your 15 hectares done.
Yeah.
You're working on such slim margins that you wouldn't really build up the capital to be able to get through that period effectively.
Whereas if you've got a bit of value addition, you've got tomatoes, cabbages, rape, whatever it might be, eggs.
Oh, and even when it comes to education, so I've been studying agricultural business management, and you know, when it came to actually like going like large scale cropping and doing our maize field and stuff, I knew nothing. You know what I mean? Like, experience really is the best teacher in life. So yeah, I urge also people who are doing degrees or, you know, in agriculture or not, to just actually get some practical experience and get your hands in the soil.
Practical experience for any industry is
exactly. Yeah.
And Kai, I find it very interesting knowing your family background, knowing how active your dad is, that, you know, you still had to go through your own learning.
Well,
Was it different?
It was. I mean, my dad, you know, he's been chippering. I never intended to go into any farming, to be honest. But he's been chippering in my ear for the last, 15 years, saying, you know, who's going to take over from me one day and spread the good word, you know. So yeah, I mean, he chippered enough, and I was like, well, you know, it makes a lot of sense, you know, let's give it a crack. And he basically introduced the two of us. He was mentoring Naya, and Naya's the real farmer.
He's also, you know what's so funny?
He's been my wingman for a long time.
Now, just quickly, you mentioned actually mushrooms, because that's a very interesting one, and I would imagine demand in Lusaka for mushrooms would be pretty high, but you're not doing them now.
We moved into the house.
You displaced the mushroom house. Is that something you'd think of then kind of going forward?
Yeah, definitely.
Because the nice thing with mushrooms is even in a small space,
you can do a lot of mushrooms.
Set it out well, you can do quite
you know, it was one of the most magical experiences to just witness the growth of mushrooms, you know, from literally nothing. So what we are hopefully planning to do at this rainy season that's approaching is the soya that we grow, which we're going to grow to supplement the animals, to use those stalks and process that to use it as the substrate for the mushrooms.
What type of mushrooms were you growing?
Oysters, yeah. They're the easiest, and for a first-time grower, that's usually just what you do.
Cut your teeth on the easiest.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, mushrooms is an interesting one because of the fact that, getting into it, there can be a bit of a cost in terms of building a structure or something along those lines, but then
once that's
space
there,
usage, it's probably one of the best for return. Actually.
I mean, what did you harvest? Almost 100 kilos out of a 2x2 room. you know, basically all you're doing is spraying it with water
Yeah.
a couple of times a day. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that can be automated too. Just,
Exactly,
put in
yeah,
an
yeah.
push a button.
Exactly.
Yeah, we weren't
Yeah.
quite there yet. We just had our hygrometer hanging, and we would be like, "Oh, okay, it's a bit too low," and then we'd just spray it. It's a bit too high. Open the windows, like. But
Still
yeah,
the learning curve. though.
exactly.
Still the learning
Yeah.
curve, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You know, trying to figure or explain your, you know, the cost-benefit ratio of choosing organic versus conventional.
I mean, the thing with us is that, you know, we started off on the foot that we started off on, which was organic. We don't really know what to compare that with. So we're not really sure what we would trade it off with, because we don't know.
We don't really have much to compare that with. But as I said, we get the free labor of all of the insects and the birds that do the work for us, in that way. But also, if we, like Kai was mentioning, true cost accounting, if you're looking at it as a business, but if you're also looking at it as an ecosystem, if you factor in true cost accounting, you know, what is your health worth? You know, what is clean water worth? What is good soil worth? You know, for
Pollination services.
Exactly. You know, all of these things that not only are applicable now, but 500 years down the line for our great-great-great-grandchildren to experience, and have that freedom and that right to. So, you know, you also have to ask yourself, what is that worth?
Yeah.
What's the cost of that? And compare it with, okay, am I just going to chuck in some pesticide now for 500 kwacha? Or, you know, there's many variables, so it depends what level you're looking at it on.
Have you found then that there are certain things that are not worth doing because it's too difficult to overcome, say, a certain challenge with it? Are there certain pests that affect a certain crop in such a way that has not made it worthwhile to do it because you're constantly battling that?
I mean, the maize probably would be one thing I would phase out in the future. We did have a bit of armyworm pressure. However, you know, getting our mentorship from like Sebastian, he advised us from the get-go is, you know, don't plant one massive field of maize. So we started off with one line of cover crop, which was sun hemp and pigeon pea, and then we did 4 rows of maize, 1 cover crop, 4 rows of soya, 1 cover crop maize. So it was quite an interesting observation, that as well, because our armyworm came in from supposedly our neighbors. And as soon as they hit the first line of maize, they hammered that quite heavily. We did try a few things like pouring sand into the funnels of the maize, which I think did help a bit. But as soon as they hit that cover crop and then the soya, they didn't really get to the next line of maize.
They were just sort of like, what is
happening with this
Hey,
field?
turn around. Let's go back.
So yeah, by the time they hit the second line, we didn't really have that much of a pressure, and then we were able to control the first line through that sand. We didn't really know what else to do, but that kind of. But other than the pest side, we haven't really experienced a massive issue with the pests. I think because we've started off with a diverse kind of portfolio of plants.
I think for me in the market garden, the biggest challenge has been climatic. So basically in terms of like the heat, I think this year has been the hottest year that we've experienced in a very long time.
Starting earlier too.
Exactly. So then you have to go about choosing different seed varieties, you know, for that. So I was looking very forward to all my winter crops, so broccolis, cauliflowers, all of that. And then they reached about that big and then they just bolted. So yeah, that's also been a learning curve. So I think that's been the biggest problem that I've faced, is not pressure from pests and disease, but actually pressure from the environment.
And timings.
Timings,
Right,
exactly.
Because you did mention about, you know, now is the time to be planting cucurbits, which is, you know, get that with the turn of the heat. As long as they're watered, they'll love this kind of weather. And get them established, get what you can before the rainy season. and then the powdery mildew
Yeah.
and all of those
And
fungi.
Cucumber
yeah,
flies.
and also to be fair, like, you know, we're supposed to, August is our month, you know, that's technically spring in Zambia, and that's when we're supposed to plant. But I had started preparing in mid-July, which is usually our winter. So
Yeah.
just by, you know, again, nothing is textbook, right?
Yeah.
You have to look and you're like, okay, it's, you know, unexpectedly warm, and I think butternuts would be quite happy right now.
Yeah.
And then you just do that a bit earlier, you know, because who knows, it is warmer now. You know, say if our rains start end of October, November, then again, if I hadn't planted in mid-July, it would be a bit late, and then I'd catch on to all that cucumber fly and mildew
Yeah.
and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of kind of factors to be kind of
Yeah.
working with and anticipating, and you know, the most we can hope for is that you win out most of the time, because there's definitely going to be 1 or 2 years
Yeah.
where we don't. You get something slightly wrong, you start early, and then you get a cold spell,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you know, the rains don't come and things just end up crisping in the fields and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it is
Sure.
it is a lot of you know, looking back at historical records, but also being able to adapt to current, you know, trends,
Situations,
which
yeah.
unfortunately are not trending as much up as they kind of are trending down. it
More of a
feels like.
negative thing, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
but being able to adapt and make the most out of it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing has been also just, you know, fire awareness in the communities, you know. This time of year, everything's shedding their leaves, all the indigenous trees, and, you know, that is our ground cover. And that's, the mulch is so important, and I think a lot of people overlook that.
Yeah.
Like the fire that started at our neighbors, it was just basically somebody sweeping up a bit of a fire that shot off into the grass, and the next thing we've lost
So much
200
valuable
hectares.
biomass.
Yeah.
200 hectares in a small area of all this biomass that would essentially feed microorganisms into the ground and help with water retention and
Yeah.
possibly reduce a lot of our
Flooding.
flooding
And
problems.
runoff, yeah.
And runoff. So yeah, I think, you know, next year, well, even this year, if we do have time, I think that's one of our bigger missions, is to try and just have more community meetings about the impact of fire and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, because it does
the
affect
destructiveness of it. You know, we had, I mean, we're quite lucky now. Most of the birds in the area have come into our farm.
Yeah.
One of the last green spaces, and birds is something that we want, you know. So
Have you speaking of the trees and things, like have you kind of gotten around to that idea of where you want to be planting areas? Have you thought about maybe putting an orchard or something along those kinds of lines?
yeah, so we did inherit a few fields, and we've kind of worked with those fields,
Yeah, as in not-
established fields.
Yeah, we didn't inherit any fruit trees.
Okay.
I mean, like, apart from
Well,
a few
just
mango
mangoes,
trees.
yeah. But yeah, so we have a small orchard that we established earlier this year.
Yeah.
But we would like to expand on that, also potentially some bananas, things like that. But yeah, as far as placement goes, I'd like to say that we've just been basically waiting for that surveyor that came yesterday to figure out, you know, where we're gonna do what, because we don't want to do something and then the rain comes, or, you know,
Yeah,
something else
floods it out.
happens,
And we're in a flood
and then
prone area.
we lose everything. So
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of crops that don't like wet feet, you know, so just sitting water. So even our orchard, we've, you know, because we know anyways that it is a bit of a floodplain, there's, we've all done them on pretty high ridges, and also just increased biomass in that area by doing a cover crop between all of the lines of the fruit trees.
Okay.
Yeah, and then mulching that back into
Exactly.
the ridges.
And we've also just done drip. So we're trying to do drip irrigation wherever we can, instead of like sprinklers, to reduce the compaction
Yeah.
on the soil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a lot that goes into it.
There is a lot, but basically we're not trying to open up new fields. We're trying to basically rework the
with
existing
what you
fields
Exactly. Yes.
that are
We
already
would
there.
like one of our main missions is not to cut down a single tree. Like everywhere we can, we just try and work around.
We do a lot of pruning.
We do pruning. When I say cut down a tree, I mean, to clear land to make space for a field, or to clear land to, do other things. In the back there, instead of doing arable crops, we'd much rather have like 80 pigs foraging amongst the trees rather. So basically using your land effectively without disturbing what's there. So there's always that debate whether, organic food, small production, can feed the world at large, feed Zambia, There seems to be this stigma that we are relying on large conventional agriculture to feed the masses, and it comes down to the fact that if you look at it realistically, I think 70% of Zambia's food actually comes from small-scale farmers, number one. And number two, we also need to be looking at not yield per acre, necessarily, but nutritional value per acre. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, if you're going to produce 50 tons of maize and it has a certain nutritional value, what is that going to do? Okay, I don't know how to answer this properly.
How is that effect going to be on the environment if it's produced with pesticides and
exactly? And what is the true cost of that to our health system?
Or to our natural systems here.
To our natural system, to our healthcare system. That's taxpayer money. There's, so many things involved.
I think this is one of the biggest problem with conventional agriculture is that the externalities are not always taken into account. The true cost accounting of that is not... Because you are not too far from the Kafue River here, but if somebody was farming this conventionally and over-fertilizing, how much of that would end up into the Kafue River?
Yeah, I mean...
Causing eutrophication, which then is a problem for the system itself, but also for us, because Lusaka gets its water from the Kafue as well.
And to be fair, I mean, you are seeing it. It's not that far away.
Yeah, a lot of the Kafue downstream in Chanyanya and
a lot of
Kafue is full of these invasive lilies and which have just
the algal blooms. You see a lot of dead fish floating around, and it's just quite. It is actually one of the most polluted rivers in Zambia.
I mean,
it is a river system that's very interesting. From the copper belt winding its way through past Lusaka to then end up in the Zambezi. It goes through some pretty high urban areas.
And a super important river.
Yes, massively. When you think of farming for Zambia, it's a huge one that comes through, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
so going back to your question, I think I do think small-scale farmers contribute massively to the food security of a country. I think the biggest issue with organic is probably your labor costs. It is a lot more labor intensive. Most small-scale farmers, we basically don't use any machinery. We don't really have a tractor on the farm. So it is a lot more labor intensive. But you've got people like Sebastian Scott that are doing, 13, 14 tons a hectare of maize. And within that hectare, he's got, 4 or 5 different other species that he's harvesting.
Sunflowers and everything.
So, I think that, if we get a shift in direction in where we should be going, I think a lot more people would cotton on to and understand that yes, I mean, so on a conventional, maybe they're getting 5 tons a hectare. So that's 3 extra hectares that you need to produce the same amount that you can.
And you're saying that's not even taking into account the pumpkin,
all the extra things that he's got running
all
in
the
there.
actual mass of food.
So that amount of production per hectare would be much, much higher than the single crop, which ultimately is only giving you, a staple rather than a staple plus a pulse, and your relish.
And a relish, exactly. I mean, you need to do such volume to actually make a decent living.
You know,
And then you're tied down by, most farmers are on quite heavy loans from banks and stuff, which a lot of farmers don't sleep about.
World market prices.
Yeah,
effectively.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, they're on the export market, which also fluctuates quite a lot.
And also in terms of, you have your costs obviously getting cheaper, as you scale up in conventional agriculture. But really, when you're working with nature's economy is abundance, right?
Yeah.
And it's forever giving, and it's, it wants to flourish.
Yeah.
So the thing with like regen ag is that, you might start at that level and it'll be super labor intensive. You've got to feed your soils, but as the years go, you're improving your soil fertility,
And the less
which
and
is
less you're
bringing
having
down
to
your
do.
cost of production,
Yeah.
essentially. Whereas a conventional farmer might start with...
changes as well.
Exactly.
If you get that drought year, if you put that effort in, you're actually going to suffer less in terms of that drought stress on various crops or even the trees.
Exactly.
Comparatively to if it's conventional and you're reliant on X and Z.
Or only irrigation, for example, So a conventional guy might start on virgin land up there, really good, okay soils, pumps that in, and then slowly that degrades, and he's lost most of his topsoil within the first 10 years due to runoff or wind erosion or whatever. Whereas on the organic side, you're actually, if everything's going well, you're building that up, and then you're...
But as you kind of mentioned, that's not being taken into account.
Exactly.
That's left off the balance sheet.
At the end of the day,
and I suppose that would be the main thing, is trying to get the mindset around to saying, no, we need to take these things into account.
And
and a long-term kind of vision for a lot of the stuff is, like I said, there's no quick money in farming at all, whatever it is. I can't, maybe chickens. But I do think a lot of conventional guys are changing as well.
Yeah.
We've got people in Mukushi that are heavy on cover crops now.
I've noticed that when I was up there in the last year and stuff like that. And not just one cover crop, they're mixing. They're throwing
massive.
so many different things into that mix, and it's just kind of like, oh, wow, this is interesting.
An uncle of mine in Mukushi, he started cover crops 4 years ago now on a commercial scale. He's a wheat farmer. And his yields and his fertilizer his yields have gone up, and his fertilizer costs have gone down, and his irrigation costs have gone down, and that's the main thing.
It's funny too, because when they experience that, it's like somebody being born again.
I know.
All of a sudden they become converts,
and he's a bit like, why didn't I do this before, and why didn't I start 20 years ago? Shit, and
Well, as the old saying goes, there's no better time than now.
Exactly.
There's no better time than now.
That's where we are.
And the power is in doing the best you can at the time that you can.
Yeah.
And when you know better, you do better.
And I think the interesting thing about that is when something like that starts to develop, there ends up being new markets that open up.
Yeah.
So somebody could actually go into producing seed of cover crops.
It's gone huge
to
now.
provide them,
Yeah.
Well, there is a shortage of cover crop seed at the moment in Zambia.
I remember somebody actually from Nkushi calling me to find out if I could, if I had access to or knowledge of where to get marigold seeds.
Wow, yeah.
And he's like, well, we need it for putting into the cover crops for control of nematodes. And it's like, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I can't help you.
Yeah.
But it does provide new opportunities for people to be
Exactly.
making new crops that never existed before.
Yeah, people might make more money on cover crop seeds than they're doing with maize. So you might go in that direction. And there's a beneficial...
and I think this is what would be nice to see with something like, and the potential with organic, is that it opens up a lot more markets and more industry that can actually feed into the overall system. So it actually builds up that kind of idea of agriculture so much more than what conventional agriculture would.
Yeah, 100%.